In this video, we'll be showing you how to create a handbag in VStitcher. Let's start by loading a reference picture and assigning it to a pattern piece. Here's an image with a handbag from different views. We'll use this image as the general guide for creating the 3D handbag. However, we won't be producing an exact copy of it. First, we'll create pattern pieces for the base of the handbag. We'll select the Insert tool and choose Rectangle from the drop-down menu. Clicking in the 2D window, you'll notice a pop-up window appear where we can edit the size. We'll then turn off the link icon to create a rectangle of 31 by 22 centimeters. This pattern piece will be used for the bag front side. We'll copy and paste it to get a back pattern piece. Next, we'll create the single pieces by inserting a rectangle 8 centimeters wide and 22 centimeters high. We can see in the reference image that the side of the bag is narrow at the top, so we'll narrow the upper edge to 5 centimeters. Then we'll copy and paste the pattern piece to use on the other side. Finally, we'll insert a bottom pattern piece, which will be 31 by 8 centimeters. Let's stitch the pattern pieces together. We'll then assign a new material instead of the default fabric. We'll go to the Library tab and download leather. Replace the original fabric by pulling the leather over the default fabric in the Resource tab. We'll also change the backside color for better orientation in the 3D space. We'll rename the pattern pieces in the 2D tab. It will help us to identify the pattern pieces once we start arranging them in the 3D window. We'll open the Arrange mode and move all pieces to the torso area. Since this cluster is flat, the pieces will also stay flat. Separate the pieces into individual clusters. This will allow us to move them freely in the 3D window. Let's open the 3D window and prepare the pieces in it. We'll use Gizmo to arrange them properly. In the Resource tab, you can see the name of the piece in use. The different color of the backside of the fabric helps us to define the correct rotation of the pattern pieces. Before starting the simulation, we'll turn off the gravity. Let's simulate. We now can move the bag to a desired location using the Move tool. Once we've set the bag in the desired location, we enable Auto Lock and turn on the gravity. Next, we'll create the bag's handles. Insert a rectangle 2 centimeters wide and 60 centimeters long. Again, we'll create just one copy and paste the second. To connect the handles to the bag, we'll use new pieces that we'll use to sew the bag and the handles. Let's start by inserting a rectangle with the measurements 1.6 by 3 centimeters and place it on the front piece. Use the magic mirror to reflect the shape on the other side. We'll do the same for the back piece. Next, we'll add 2 rectangles with the same measurements and place them on both ends of each handle. Let's rename the new pieces and go to Arrange mode to place the handles in the sleeve cluster. Then move them to separate clusters. Return to the 3D window and simulate. We'll use the Styling tool to move the handles around. Next, we'll stitch the base of the handles together. First, we'll only connect the bottom edge of each rectangle on the bag with the bottom edge on the handle. We want to be sure the stitches don't cross. We'll check the direction of the stitches in the 3D window and update the simulation. Once we know the stitching matches, we'll use a multiple stitch to connect all remaining edges of the base and the handles. To speed up our workflow, we'll use the right-click menu and select Multiple Stitch. After selecting all the edges from the first group, we'll right-click again and select 2. Now we'll select the second group of edges and finish the action by right-clicking and select Done, or by confirming the action by clicking Enter on our keyboard. We'll stitch the rest of the edges together. Great! Now we'll clear styling under the Advanced Options in the Styling tool and update the simulation. The handbag's shape has deformed. We'll fix that in a minute. First, let's move the handles to a higher 3D layer than the base compartment is. Now let's fix the handbag shape. We'll do that by changing the fabric's physics. The values we'll focus on are bend, stretch, and shear. We'll set the bend values to 10,000 and the stretch and shear values to 350. These are the values which work well, but feel free to experiment with your own settings. Use the styling tool to pinch the edges and move the handles. Let's hide the avatar and create a snapshot. Now it's time to create the foldover. Let's start by inserting a 14 by 5 by 25 cm rectangle. With the pen tool selected, we'll trace the shape of the reference image. Move it over to the rectangle, convert it into a floating line, and match its size to the piece. With the curve selected, click Slice and delete all unnecessary parts. Select the central edge and enable the edge symmetry. We'll smoothen the shape and remove the corner points. We'll rotate the fold-over pattern piece, position it on the back piece, and with the edge selected, trace as internal line. Use this new internal line to stitch the pieces together. Next, we'll move the fold-over to a higher layer. Arrange the fold-over and move it to a separate cluster. Open the 3D window and use the gizmo to move the pieces to its place. We need a fold line to bend over the front piece. We'll select an edge and clone it by offset. Then we'll change this internal line into a soft fold in the context view. We can see in the 3D window that the fold is in the wrong direction. Play with the setting until you find the correct direction. Clear the styling of all the locked pieces and dress. Use the styling tool to move the fold over. To match the bag to the reference image better, we'll change the position of the internal line, and with the slide enabled, change the size of the fold over. Create a new snapshot. Next, we want to mimic the lining inside the handbag. First, we'll load the previous snapshot without the foldover so we can see what is happening inside the handbag. We'll clone the upper edges of the base by an offset of 2 cm and change the internal lines into cut marks. We'll go to the Library tab and download lining from the woven section. Clone the leather material and pull the lining fabric over the leather and choose Group. Now we'll edit the group of fabrics. In the context view, we'll disable the back side of the leather and the face side of the lining. We also recolor the lining for more visual contrast and assign this group of fabrics to the lower parts of the handbag. Let's click Dress. The handbag is deforming again. That's because we replaced the back side of the fabric with lining. To fix this, we need to change the lining physics to match the leather physics. We'll set the bend values to 10,000 and the stretch and shear values to 350 again, and update the 3D window. To get a more realistic rendering of the handbag, we'll also change the thickness of the materials to 4 mm. We'll change it in both leather and lining properties. Next, we'll assign some top stitching to the handles to get a more realistic look. Clone the top stitching and assign it to the main compartment. We want the top stitching to appear only inside the handbag and to be doubled. We'll disable the single needle stitch and its shadow from the facing side, and adjust transparency. Then we'll change the line count and increase the distance between them on the back side. Note that this step applies to the shadow and the stitch. Let's load the snapshot with the foldover and add the top stitching also to this piece. For the back side, we'll clone the stitches again. After applying, we'll change the line count and distance to the same amount of the other stitches. Next, we'll add some 3D trims to uplift the handbag. We'll add 4 studs to the bottom piece. To learn how to add piece-assignable trims and set their connectors, watch our Import Handbags into VStitcher video. Using the transformation in the context view, we'll set the trims in the exact location. Now we'll go to the Library tab and download a snap button, which we'll assign to the handbag. We want to replace the fastening with a more decorative button. To do so, in the Resources tab, we'll look inside the snap button and replace the upper trim with another 3D object. For a more realistic look, we'll change the bottom color and increase its metalness. And also increase the stud's metalness. We'll scale the size of the leather material in the image editor and adjust the intensity of the texture maps. Note that we need to repeat this step on the leather fabric that's in the group with the lining. Next, we'll tweak the colors of the leather backside of the bag, the lining, and top stitching. We'll select all pattern pieces and lower their grid size for smoother simulation. And there you have it, an easy way to create a handbag in VStitcher. A great way to complement any outfit. To learn more, visit our Help Center at support.browseware.com.